Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. In the last few days, the greatest of all time discussion has once again come back onto the menu. Is it Crimsix? Is it Scump? Could it still be Karma somehow? A lot of pro players believe that despite the championship victories and the world championships going against Scump, he's still the greatest that we've ever seen in Call of Duty history. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Really up to the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that one. Firstly, there's some Charlie intel. Infinity Ward's getting ready for something or other over the coming days here as to what they're going to do with the announcement for Modern Warfare 2. Hopefully we get some indication that this might be a better year, or maybe 2 years, who knows, right, for competitive Call of Duty than we have had at, well, let's say this year and back in Modern Warfare 2019, for example. Guess we'll see on that front. Just this also from Carly thought was kind of cool. If you guys remember this map from Advanced Warfare, this is the map Terrace, and this is actually based on a real-life location. I've never actually been to Santorini, but I'm pretty sure there's an island, like it's an Aegean, I think in the Aegean Sea, a Greek island called Santorini, that actually this is based on. It looks very much like this. I don't know if they actually copied and pasted it, because sometimes on maps, like in CSGO maps, I think that maps like Rialto and stuff, it's and also Canals, if you guys remember that CS map that was added a few years ago, is basically just copy and pasted from what it actually looks like in Venice, which is kind of cool. So I don't know if this is actually the actual landscape, but if you guys remember Terrace back in the day, I think they used to play this on Search and Destroy briefly. I think maybe it got eventually removed from the map set back in Advanced Warfare. I kind of forget, but it definitely was played at the start. There's a few famous moments on this map actually in some of the 2Ks, some of the clutches. I think even Karma has a pretty famous clutch on this map, and there's also one that went down towards this A or B bomb site, whatever it was down here. Just legendary map. Was cool to see it make an appearance back in the timeline, I thought, to be honest. And hopefully we get more of this going forwards, because it's just a shame, you know, you see maps like this, it's so legendary, it's so cool. It might not have been the greatest, but it just kind of worked so well and was such a nice environment. And nowadays, like, what they're delivering is maybe leaves something to be desired, let's just say. Also leaving something to be desired, none other than the spawn system here. Kind of interesting, actually, because like clearly Rambo, Ray, and the OpTic guys playing a scrim set, they're not too happy about the spawns that go down. So as you can see right here, this is player number 1. I'm guessing that number 7 of the boys are the OpTic guys, and then we've got number 1 just spawning right here, which is a very strange one, because you would believe that number 7 should be preventing them to spawn here. Of course, yes, like the healers just popped, so number 1 spawn maybe makes sense, but it's still kind of strange. I guess there's a world in which number 1 could have even spawned behind them. Apparently the reason this happens, as Rambo explained, is because number 5 here, I think, is because he's looking towards where they should be spawning, therefore one player just spawns out instead, which is very interesting actually. But yeah, I reckon, as Rambo says, lost a little sleep over this one. So yeah, the Gavutu spawns still coming back to haunt OpTic, it seems, to some degree. He actually explains here, player spawns out because one player peeks in the enemy spawn area. The issue is the predictability in squad spawns, and only one player spawns out rather than the whole team in different cases. That's the thing, like the squad spawn system kind of exists, but it's not always the case. Like we saw last time, of course, when it was OpTic versus Folder, and the one player spawned behind Shotzzy, and then the entire team spawned on him. That's kind of the squad spawn situation. In this case, it was only one player that spawned out, and you've got to deal with one guy coming behind you, and the rest of the team kind of spawning where you expect them to spawn, which, you know, obviously creates some issues, right, if it's unpredictable. That's kind of the main frustration here from Rambo, is that, like, look, if that was the spawn all the time and that was always predictable, then fine, but that's the thing, it's actually very different now, and I'm pretty sure they've done these experimental spawns over the last few days. They've been trying out in ranked play and other game modes. They've now added them to ranked play and the kind of professional circuits in the CDL rules and custom games and the like, and now they've actually got to deal with these new spawns once again. So as Rambo says, the spawns at the beginning of the year were mostly predictable in terms of where things would flip out fully, and now they're different to that, and now there are some edge cases where it's incredibly difficult to read in game since the recent update. So he reckons that actually the new spawn updates that we have seen might have actually taken the game backwards, right? It might have been better just to keep the spawns as they were at the start of the year, which might have been on paper worse, but maybe still more predictable, which might be the key. So a very frustrating discussion, to be honest, with Rambo to be having with the rest of his team, but something like, we'll see how it plays out, I suppose, over the coming weeks. If it doesn't change again, then maybe they'll actually be able to work out what's going on here. This just to mention though, because yesterday on the OpTic podcast, thought this was crazy actually, how like Scump was sitting courtside, right, got these tickets, and you could see, we looked at this a few days ago, and as Hex mentioned on the podcast last night, like after the game, some of the basketball players were coming up to Scump and be like, wow, like Scump, wow, really big fan, man, when you won that Warzone tournament, that was crazy. Just gotta share this, because it's so crazy, like the influence that Scump has, like far beyond Call of Duty, and this like leads very nicely into the greatest of all time discussion, right, because maybe it doesn't just come down to championship victories and a world championship rings, but more comes down to influence, and you know, this story is obviously kind of crazy.
This is the world that Seth lives in, and what a poor, handsome, innocent boy he is, okay? We're sitting there at halftime, Mitchell, you know what I'm saying, Mitchell, the guy from Jazz.
Donovan Mitchell?
Yeah.
Spider?
Yeah, Spider, right? Like, keeps on looking at us. As he's rolling, he looks over, all right? or halftime, one of the Jazz players, I don't remember who it was because it was fast, comes up to the bench, and I'm like, or to where we're sitting, and we're like, yo, what up? I said hi because I was sitting first, and then immediately dude goes over and is like, Scump, you're the GOAT, you're the legend, you're the man, right? And so it's like, oh, thanks, man, thanks, that was awesome. So says hi to Dashy and then takes off to the locker rooms. End of the game, another player from the Jazz comes over, like, what up?
So it seems that the Rokkr Major 2 tournament, Deserter were kind of asking a lot of the casters, players, this type of stuff, who do they consider to be the greatest player in the world? Right now, unfortunately, maybe it's not unfortunately, it's probably understandably, but there's only really 2 players in discussion. It wasn't long ago at all where it was pretty much Crim and Karma were considered number 1, number 2, and maybe Karma being number 1 actually for quite some time. Like, I'm still affectionately called the GOAT, but still maybe he's not really in that conversation anymore. But still, it doesn't take long, really, does it, after Karma's retirement, for him to be out of the conversation. I think, in fairness, understandably so, just because longevity to me is an incredibly important factor, and the fact that Crim and Scump are still competing and still doing great in tournaments and winning tournaments in Scump's case over the last couple of years, and of course, I guess since Karma retired in the middle of Modern Warfare, Crim went on to win the World Championship that year, right? So I think that does definitely play a part in where those two are considered to be above and beyond. But Scump versus Crimsix, that's been the big discussion the last few years. In terms of accolades, it's certainly Crimsix. He has the most championship victories, he has the most world championship victories, but that doesn't necessarily give you a picture of the entire discussion. So I'll show a brief clip from this. A few of the guys basically saying, look, yeah, Crimsix might have the most rings, but Scump's the greatest.
Honestly, I think he probably is a definitive good of CoD right now.
I think Seth is already the most talented player we've ever seen.
He's been like the face of CoD. I would say he definitely helped build CoD.
You can argue Scump's been just so darn consistent since he was carrying me, right?
The way Seth has represented himself over the last 10, however many years he's been competing, at least 10.
His longevity is insane.
What he's been doing between content creation, the fan base that he's created over there with OpTic.
And kind of just been constantly growing his following. I feel like it's something that he doesn't get enough credit for.
He's still doing his thing. He's still flying. Guy still scares me.
He's the god of CoD.
Who else do you think is in that conversation?
I'd have to say Crim's number 1. You have to say Crim because he's got 3 rings.
I'd probably give it to Crim. Probably another world championship. If he gets another world championship and does really well this season, there's definitely probably an argument for him.
To be the GOAT, I mean, everyone is probably just going to look at championships, and obviously the ring is definitely a big thing.
To get in the conversation with Crim, I would say just maybe another world championship. I think he definitely needs one more to rival how many they have.
Some will say he needs to win more chips because Crim has more. I think he just needs to keep doing his thing, honestly, and no one can really deny it.
But it's like, when are people going to talk about Scump and how he used a main SMG his whole career? You know what I'm saying? He used a main sub his whole career. He played one of the hardest roles his whole career. He's had one negative event in 8 years of play. I feel like people aren't really giving credit, even based on just the role that he plays and what he brings to a team. You know what I'm saying? That's why I feel like people don't talk about that enough. They don't talk about Scump's talent enough. Sure, you could look at the achievements, but whatever happened to just the straight up just eye test of raw, just gunny Call of Duty player? What happened to that?
Zuma also, I thought, made a pretty nice point on this, actually. The fact that, yes, Crimsix has not really been an SMG player his career, right? To me, the differential between Scump throughout the majority of his career and all the other SMG players in the world has been light and day. It's honestly crazy looking at the numbers, for example, from Advanced Warfare, from Black Ops 3, when Scump was pretty much in his prime, of the numbers Scump was putting up on the hardest role compared to every other player in the world. No one could get close. You look at, the Advanced Warfare stats, for example, you pretty much see at the top, you've got your Formals, you've got your Claysters, this type of stuff. A lot of AR players, I guess Slasher probably was up there statistically to a degree towards the ends, but Scump is by far and away, Scump and Zoom actually, I guess, towards the ends, were by far and away the greatest SMGs, but Scump clearly over the course of the year was. And that's the thing, right? Scump's done that for so many years on an SMG, which probably is a discussion to be had, right? And also you've got to think that Crimsix probably was the best player in the game for a time. He was probably number 1 in the world briefly back in Call of Duty Ghosts. He probably had a period of having that accolade. Scump has had that for, quite a long time. He had it for a good few years, Advanced Warfare, certainly, Black Ops 3, certainly, even parts of Infinite Warfare, you can make that case. Back in Modern Warfare 3 as well, people said Scump was number 1, so maybe the fact that, Crimsix hasn't been number 1 for so long as Scump has, maybe also plays a factor into the consideration. You've also got to consider Scump's incredible record of 8 years in a row without going negative in an event. That's just absurd, and now he's won event on 10 different Call of Duty titles, so that also plays a factor. So there's so many discussions here, there's so many ways to look at it, but of course the other part of it, I brought up this quick tweet from Neptune real quick from back in 2019, because was like this common discussion at the time that Karma was number 1. Now that's not really the case anymore. And if we just look at this as well, actually, Crimsix, Scump, if you look at wins, of course, some of these are online, but Crimsix is quite a way ahead. There's no real way, like Scump could, in theory, catch up Crimsix and overtake him, but with the amount of events there are now, like how difficult it is to dominate, as the OpTic Dynasty and the Complexity Dynasty did back in the day, with the competition not being what it was today, it's going to be so tough for Scump to overhaul this gap realistically. To me, from my perspective, like if Scump right now has 1 ring and Crimsix has 3, even though you can talk about the Mickey Mouse ring all you want, but technically it was a 3rd World Championship online in Modern Warfare. But I think from lots of people's perspective, that's kind of what holds Scump just back, right? Because all the other things, Scump gonna has the edge on him, right? In terms of, you know, championships over many different games, years without going negative, like periods being number 1 player, also just influence in general. Of course, influence is a massive discussion here in terms of like what Scump has done for Call of Duty. He's certainly the biggest personality, the biggest name. Like that story about the, you know, Jazz versus Mavs game or whatever they want to watch, like it's crazy, right? It just shows like who Scump is in the kind of general culture, right? And also what he's done for COD is a massive discussion. So there's that part of it as well, which I think should be considered. But for most people, like the 1 ring versus 3 rings kind of just holds him back to some degree. So I think from my perspective, if Scump gets another ring, then he becomes the greatest of all time, at least in my opinion. Some people say he already is, right? Which is, you can probably make a good argument for that right now. And I think we've seen that over the last few minutes here. There's many cases you can make that. But, you know, I think in terms of championships, at the end of the day, like, you know, greatest player ever, like championships, world championships is a big discussion. Like, are world championships overrated? That's another big discussion as well, right? Should it matter so much how many world championships you have if you've got 29 wins but only, you know, 1 world championship? But a guy like JCap, for example, has like, you know, he has 2 world championships but he only has 10 wins, right? So there's all this discussion, and same with Arcitys, I guess, 2 world championships now, only 9 tournament victories. We could probably go on about this all day, to be honest, so we'll leave it there, but very much intrigued to your perspective in the comment section below. This also just kind of to close out with here from Los Angeles Thieves, $15 to build your dream team of 4 for any Call of Duty. Who have you got? This is pretty good. I honestly really like Maven's one. I saw this. I could probably do a better job if I really thought about it. But for now, I do think Maven's done very well. I mean, you could even chuck Scump in here, to be perfectly honest, instead of Simp or something. But yeah, Simp, Shotzi, Slasher, Kenny, it's a pretty damn good team. There's other ones as well that were being mentioned, though, so as said right here, like Scump, Jacob, Clayster, and Methods would be a dominant force. Jacob's like, yeah, we would, and Scump's like, nah, there's no way. Methods would be awful. I blame you, to be honest, me too. And yeah, Methods just drop you batters there. That's a pretty funny team. This also I thought of Attach was kind of funny. As Liar says, I'll take my boy Attach 4 times, keep the change. It'd be kind of funny, actually, if you could somehow just like pick 4 of 1 player. That'd be kind of interesting, right? Imagine 2 Shotzies as your SMG duo. Like, I mean, yeah, you're really talking now. And speaking of Simp, actually, I thought this was kind of crazy, because I'm, what, like 22 now, and almost 23, and the first COD I played was Black Ops 1, and I played that, and maybe I played Modern Warfare 2 on someone's like Nintendo DS or something, but I got Black Ops 1 was the first COD I got when I guess I was 11, which I feel like is kind of young for Call of Duty, though. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But Mods Ross says Call of Duty 2, which of course is way before that, and Simp says that was the same COD he played. Like, Simp's what, like 20, and he played COD 2 as his first COD? Like, this guy legit came out of the womb and picked up a controller. But very much intrigued to your thoughts and all this stuff in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hitting the like button, tell us your YouTube gods, this is a good video. Others like you should see it as well, and I've grown the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you as always, take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.